Hi and welcome to the video which is on factorising when the highest common factor is a common bracket. So a common error is to mistake these kind of questions for expanding questions, because if you look at a question like this, common errors people will expand it instead because it looks like an expanding question, doesn't it? It looks like you go 4 times x, 4 times 1, plus x times x, x times 1, and then collect like terms, doesn't it? They look just like that. But keep an eye, if the question doesn't say to expand, if it says instead factorise, it's a completely different kind of question. So instead you've got to find the highest common factor. So be wary of that. That's just a very common error in tests and quizzes and that kind of thing. So common error is to mistake these questions for expanding questions. To factorise these, notice that the brackets in each of the questions are the same. So for example, see here, same bracket, x plus 1, x plus 1. Same here, same bracket, x minus 3, x minus 3. That's generally what happens, not always, but most of the time these questions look like that. This bracket is therefore the highest common factor, because this whole term you can divide by x plus 1, and this whole term you can divide by x plus 1 as well. So the highest common factor is x plus 1. And in this one, the highest common factor is x minus 3, and x minus 3 here too. So the bracket is therefore the highest common factor, and the bracket, therefore, like before, with basic factorising, the highest common factor goes out the front, like usual. The remaining two terms then go into the second bracket. So here's two worked examples. So fully factorise. Again, notice that the brackets are the same in both of these questions. We've got x plus 1, and we've got x minus 3, x minus 3. So the highest common factor in this case is a bracket. So a highest common factor, it's worth writing out. Highest common factor is x plus 1, especially when you're just starting off with this, just so you get into the habit of doing it and you can look back and see what you were doing and make sense of it. So the highest common factor is a bracket, it's x plus 1. So like I said, just like before, the highest common factor goes out the front. So highest common factor goes out the front, and it's a bracket with an expression in it, x plus 1. So see, here's the highest common factor out the front, and you open up the brackets. When you divide off the highest common factor from this term, you're just left with 4, because this bracket times 4 makes 4x plus 1, and this bracket times what? Makes x plus 1, and notice it's just x. So a little shortcut is just to write the highest common factor out the front, and then these two terms are what goes into this bracket. But the reasoning is because 4 times this is 4x plus 1, and x times all this is x plus 1. And that's the answer. So your answer looks like a foiling kind of question, doesn't it? So put the highest common factor out the front like usual, and the remaining expression is here, comes from the 4 and the x, because you've divided off x plus 1 from both of these little mini expressions. Same with this one, the highest common factor is a bracket, so highest common factor is x minus 3, which is the expression in the bracket. Pop the highest common factor at the front like before, x minus 3, make sure to put it in a bracket. If you don't put it in a bracket, it won't be correct. And then when you think of it, the remaining two parts are the 5 and the x. So 5 plus x goes into the other bracket, and that's the answer. That's why I've circled it in yellow. And it makes sense because 5 times this bracket makes 5x minus 3, and x times this bracket makes x minus 3. So it does make sense. So the remaining other two terms go in the bracket, meaning the 5 and the x go into the second bracket, the 4 and the x go into the second bracket. Now let's try some more. Feel free to pause and try them yourself, or you can do them with me. It's fine because you'll do plenty when you do the exercises. So we've got 3, I'll just pause it. So 3x plus 7 minus x plus 7. The highest common factor is a bracket. So I've written the highest common factor in red out the front. So highest common factor is x plus 7. And then the other remaining parts, 3 and minus x, go into the other bracket. And that makes sense because 3 times the red bracket makes this part, and negative x times that bracket makes this whole part here. Same here, we've got x plus 4, So the highest common factor is a bracket, and there's no number here. So when there's no number here, just if it helps, put in a 1, because it'll help you to realize what goes over here. Because it does make sense that x times the blue bracket makes this part here, and 1 times that makes this part here. If you put 0 here, it wouldn't be right, because 0 times that would make 0, so this part wouldn't exist anymore. And if you just wrote x, then it wouldn't work either, because x times this just makes this part, which means this part wouldn't exist at all. So you need to have a 1 there. So writing in the 1 here might be really helpful when you're working out. Yep. Okay, cool, let's go. Next one. Highest common factor is a bracket, so C minus 1 is our highest common factor in a bracket. And then A and minus B go in the other bracket, and it's done. And it makes sense because A times the blue bracket makes this part here, and negative B times the blue bracket makes this whole part here. So it does make sense. Next common factor is again a bracket. So 2 plus x goes here. Put in your 2 plus x and open up another bracket, and A minus B goes here. It does make sense because A times the red bracket makes this part, and negative B times the red bracket makes this part here. And nothing more. Sometimes people think, oh, I've got to FOIL the answer. But no, factorize means you're putting the brackets back in. So your answer should have brackets like they do here. Cool. And thank you very much. That's the end of this very short lesson on expanding when the highest common factor is a bracket.